أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين رضي الله تعالى عنهم وعن كافة المؤمنين رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. Dear brothers and sisters, Ramadan Mubarak to all of you. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put tawfiq and blessings in your fast and your dua. May Allah preserve our hearts and protect all of our sins and make all of us those that speak the truth in the face of great test and great turmoil. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to put tawfiq in all of our actions and to make our actions those actions that are pleasing to Him in this life and in the hereafter. Our topic today, inshallah, is about lying. And lying is part of a bigger topic related to our istiqamah and our righteousness. And this is related to our iman and the strength of our iman. Dear brothers and sisters, all of the body, the entire parts of the body, have an effect on the qalb, on the heart. But unlike the other parts of the body, unlike the eyes, for example, or the ears, for example, or the hands, or the stomach, for example, or the genitalia, or the feet, those parts, when they make an error, when they sin, when they transgress the boundaries of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, those transgressions end up impacting the heart. But the tongue is a little bit different. With respect to the tongue, the actions of the tongue is not impacted or does not impact the heart, but it is impacted by the heart. In other words, if a person speaks the truth, then it's a reflection of the fact that that person has a good heart and that they are a believer. And if the person lies or speaks something contrary to the truth, then it indeed is a reflection that that person's state of heart, the affairs of their heart, is such that it is sick, or such that they are playing around with the boundaries of faith. So to begin this session, we have to first understand that the lisan, the tongue, what the tongue does, what it engages in, all of its communication, is in reality an effect and a byproduct of the state of the qalb. With that in mind, of all the harms of the tongue, of all of the vices of the tongue, lying, otherwise known as kadhib, is the worst. Because the Prophet ﷺ spoke specifically about kadhib and the dangers of lying in such profound ways that it merits our attention in Ramadan. To begin with, the first thing is that the Prophet ﷺ was asked by some of his companions. They said, Ya Rasulullah, O Messenger of Allah, can a mu'min steal? And he said, sallallahu qad yakun dhalik. It's possible. And then they said, Ya Rasulullah, can a believer commit adultery or fornication or zina? And he sallallahu said, qad yakun dhalik. It could happen. And then they asked him, Ya Rasulullah, can a believer lie, or does a believer lie? And the Prophet ﷺ, he said, La, no, not at all. And then he quoted the famous verse in Surah Al-Nahl, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions very strong language about the people that tell lies. إِنَّمَا يَفْتَرِيَ الَّذِينَ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ بِآيَاتِ اللَّهِ أُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْكَاذِبُونَ. That the only people that fabricate and tell lies are people that don't believe in the ayahs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They are disbelievers. Kadhib, or lying, is one of those traits that does not coexist at the same time as true iman. In other words, at the danger of lying is such that when the person lies, or if they lie, the malaika that are around them leave them, and it's a reflection of the fact that their true condition of being a real believer, their true condition of being a real mu'min, is lost from them at that moment. They have gone down in rank. The Prophet ﷺ was asked specifically about the character traits of a hypocrite, a munafiq, and we know that the hypocrites are fi dark al-asfal min an-nar, that the hypocrites are those who are in the lowest part of the fire, and they receive the worst torment in Jahannam. And the first thing that he said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is that the hypocrite has three traits, or three character traits. And the very first character trait was when they narrate an event, إِذَا حَدَّثَ كَذِبْ. When they narrate an event, they tell a lie. They narrate the event contrary to what really happened and the way the event really occurred. And then we know the other character traits such that when they are entrusted with something, they betray their trust. Ila akhir hadith. So the main point is that lying is a character trait of the munafiq, and the munafiq cannot, or nifaq, hypocrisy, cannot, may not, and does not coexist in the same body at the same time as iman, or as that of a true believer. You have to be one. So lying as a character trait is a state of the qalb. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts all of this in perspective for us in Surah Nisa. And he mentions in Surah Nisa the context of those people that engage in all kinds of private, intimate, personal conversations. We text each other all the time. We send emails all the time. We pull people aside and talk with them after Taraweeh, or in the masjid, or in our work, or if we run into somebody at the grocery store. We have personal, private, one-on-one conversations all the time. And in the vast majority, overwhelming cases, much of our personal and private conversation either stays within the boundaries of what is permissible, or it exits those boundaries in the name of exaggeration, in the name of joking, in the name of trying to look good, in the name of trying to appeal to people. And so there's a danger in our private conversations in that, because of our desire to want to look good, or to feel good, or to gain sympathy, we may tend to skirt around the truth, or to go beyond the boundaries of truthful discourse. And that's where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions to us, لا خير في كثير من نجواهم, لا خير في كثير من نجواهم, that in most of their najwa, in most of their intimate, private, personal, one-on-one conversations, when nobody else is looking, when nobody else is listening, when nobody else is interested, in much of their najwa, their intimate conversations, لا خير في, there's no good that comes out of it. There's no good that is in it. There's no good that is produced by it. And so we have to be very, very careful. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us the exceptions. إِلَّا مَنْ أَمَرَ بِصَدَقًا, except the type of conversations where the persons or the parties that are involved are inspiring or motivating or commanding or instructing to help someone else, or to do some kind of sadaqah, some act of charity or virtue. أَوْ مَعْرُوفًا, Allah Ta'ala then says, or in the context where the conversants end up commanding or instructing one another or somebody else to perform an act of virtue that benefits someone else, or that is consistent with an obligation, or consistent with a recommendation, some type of fard or some type of nad, something in the area of the mandub. أو إصلاح بين الناس, Allah Ta'ala says. Or the other positive exception to that is in the private conversation, where one of the conversants or both of them end up instructing the other to correct or to repair the relationship between them and somebody else. These are the exceptions to positive conversations. And in another hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, the Prophet ﷺ talked about other exceptions to positive discourse, which include dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and commanding what's right and forbidding what's wrong, and things related to the family arena, small talk with your wife, small talk with your children. But even in that case, we have to be very, very careful about the intimate conversations we have with each other. There's a case of a sahabiya, a mother, who in the presence of the Prophet ﷺ, she asked her child, she said, Ta'al, she said, come here. And the child didn't come. And then the second time she said, Ta'al, come here. She said, I want to give you something. And the Prophet ﷺ asked her, what do you want to give him? Yani, we do this all the time with our kids. Sometimes to get our kids' attention, we say, come here, I want to tell you something. I want to give you something. And it may be true or it may not be true. So the Prophet ﷺ checked her in this and just asked, what is it you want to give him? She said, a tamar, a piece of date. And he, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, if you had not given her, had a piece of date for him, if you did not intend to give him that date, if there was no date, you would have been considered, or that would have been considered a kadhba, one lie. That would have been crossing the boundary. So even in our talk with our families, we have to be careful not to lie, not to cross boundaries, which includes not exaggerating, which includes not joking in a way that goes beyond the limits and the boundaries that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has set forth. Kadhib, or lying, is defined as narrating an event that is contrary to the waqia', that is khilaf of the waqia', or khilaf of the haqiqah, that is different from the reality, in any way, form, or fashion. And as a protection and a guard, Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu ta'ala used to be so fearful of speaking when he shouldn't be speaking, or he used to be so fearful of inserting himself into conversations and it leading to narrating something that's contrary, that he used to at times put pebbles in his mouth to keep his mouth closed and to keep him from lying, to stop him from that impulse. So this is very, very, very important for us to understand that of all of the traits, of all of the actions of the tongue, lying is the worst. And lying is the worst because it is a character trait of the munafiq. And in the Quran, that's according to the hadith, and in the Quran, it's a character trait of those people who deny the signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in Surah An-Nahl. And so the character trait of Iman is so beautiful such that we have to preserve it and we have to protect it. And one of the truest ways to guard and protect that character trait is to speak truth, to be truthful in our kalam. And remember, our kalam, or our lisan, or our tongue, will testify against us or for us on the day of judgment. There is an aspect where there is an opinion in the Sharia where the scholars, the ulama, have made it jaiz, have made it permissible in one particular instance to lie. And that is the instance where it's called being in a situation of darura, being in a situation of extreme necessity. Typically, the definition of that is that if a person is in a situation and their life is threatened, for example. So if your life is threatened, and the only way to save your life is to tell a lie, then in that case, the ulama have abaha dhalik, they have permitted that, they have made that jaiz. Within that sphere of permissibility, there is one other case where the ulama have made it permissible. And that is actually mentioned in the last part of the ayah that I quoted in Surah Nisa, which says, لا خير في كثير من نجواهم, that there's no khair in most of their intimate talk, إلا من أمر بصدقة, except those that command for charity, أو معروفا, or that they command each other to do something virtuous or positive, أو إصلاح بين الناس. And this is that last part, that إصلاح بين الناس, that it is permissible or jaiz to tell a lie when the intent is to rectify or to correct and to repair relations with believers. So for example, if there's a person who you know is angry with somebody else, you go to person A who you know is angry at person B, and person A and person B are fighting and they're angry. And you go to person A in confidence and said, hey, person B has informed me that they really are sorry, they don't mean it, they want to repair relations with you, they're very remorseful about what's done, even though person B has never said anything. And then you go to person B and you mention that same thing to person B, for example. You say person A is really, I've just talked with person A, and person A is really sorry, really remorseful, and they want to repair a relationship. And on the count of that, person A and B come together with you being there, for example, and you bring them together under that umbrella of Islah Bain al-Nas. And the catalyst that brought them together was the fact that you went to each of them and with the intention of Islah, with the intention of rectifying and correcting the relationship and repairing the relationship, you spoke something that was contrary to the reality. That's considered an exception to the rule, and in that case, that is not a character trait of a munafiq, that is not a character trait of a disbeliever, that is a character trait of khayr. There's khayr in that, inshallah ta'ala. So this is the boundary of lying, to protect yourself or to repair relationships for the solidarity of the ummah, for the solidarity of brothers and sisters to remain intact. Outside of that, in matters of joking, in matters of exaggeration, in matters where you're narrating something in your private conversations with your family, with your friends, with anyone else, and to be very careful not to narrate anything that is contrary to reality. Because if that is the case, then it may be that at the time that you lie, the fear that you should have, that we should have, is that at the time we tell a lie, perhaps our iman or portion of our iman is stripped away. And the more we lie, the more of our iman is stripped away. And it only takes one lie to tip us over the boundary into a state of nifaq, having that character trait of a munafiq. And it only takes another lie before that becomes a pattern into rejecting the ayat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, إِنَّمَا يَفْتَرِيَ الَّذِينَ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ بِآيَاتِ اللَّهِ, that only the disbelievers are the ones that end up fabricating and inventing fabrications and lies, and they disbelieve in the ayat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So be mindful of these hadith, brothers and sisters, and be mindful that putting all of this in the overall perspective of what Ramadan is about, that it is about restraining all of our limbs and orienting all of our body parts to the complete service of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in orienting all of our body parts, what happens is all of our limbs and our desire for consumption is diminished. And as a result of that, our drive and our desire to speak is also diminished as well. Our desire to speak, our motivation to speak, and our will to speak is actually diminished. And so silence becomes the norm in this time. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, he used to say, "Man kana yu'minu billahi wal yawmil akhir falyakul khayran aw liyasmut." For the one who believes in Allah and the last day, let them speak good or keep silent. And silent is the asl, silent is the foundation, such that in Ramadan we should only speak when we are prompted to speak, when we have no choice but to speak, when we have no reason but to speak. And before we speak, we should be very mindful about what we say and who we say it to and how we say it. And why? Because speaking is a reflection of our character, of the state of affairs of our qalb and our heart. And we want our hearts to be pure. We want our hearts to be clean. We want our hearts to be open to the nur of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And therefore, when we speak, our spoken words must reflect that purity, that clarity, that cleanliness, that beauty. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us all tawfiq in our kalam. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala purify our tongues and purify our hearts and allow our tongues to reflect the beautiful state of our hearts. I want to conclude by asking all of you to support Lamppost Productions. They're having a fundraiser and a drive, inshallah ta'ala. I want to ask all of you to donate and support to Lamppost Productions. These brothers and sisters are doing phenomenal work. They're doing a phenomenal job in the cause of Allah. This work really needs to be done. They have a fundraiser going on during the month of Ramadan. They're trying to raise, alhamdulillah, $50,000. So I want to ask all of you to commit to giving something to them. Remember the ayah that we just quoted, La khayra fi kathirin min najwahum. There's no khair in the intimate conversation, in most of their intimate conversations, illa amr bil ma'ruf, amr bil sadaqah, except those that inspire to give sadaqah. So here we are, trying to inspire all of you to give sadaqah. So this way, even this talk, inshallah ta'ala, that we're giving will be included in the khair, inshallah, of this najwa, of this intimate conversation that we are having with each other, because we're trying to enjoin all of you to give sadaqah, inshallah ta'ala, aw ma'roof, Allah Ta'ala says, or doing things that are recommended, or fard, that's the ma'ruf, praiseworthy actions, and supporting Lamppost Production, this cause where all of these scholars, brothers and sisters, are being gathered together to inspire all of you and all of us to be better than who we are. Oh, islahan bayn al-nas, or to correct each other, and that's what this is all about. This platform is all about. So please support them. Please keep them in your dua. If you cannot financially support them, ask someone who can, inshallah. And please keep me and my family and all of our brothers and sisters who contribute to this during Ramadan. Please keep all of us in your dua. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم لسائر المسلمين ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم وصلى الله تعالى وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. رمضان كريم.